everybody, it's Mr. Auerbach, and I'm here to show you how to make a protein, starting with messenger RNA and going to a chain of amino acids. And so the protein molecule that we're working with today, as we see in this little picture and on slide 4, is the insulin molecule from cows, the beef insulin molecule. And it's like all proteins, it's a chain of amino acids, and we see them here, they're numbered. So these are all, each circle is an amino acid, and you see them in two different chains, chain which has amino acids 1 through 30, and then another chain that has 31 through 50, and then they're attached to each other by these sulfur bridges that we'll learn about a little bit later. But together these make up the molecule insulin, which is important in processing sugar in cells. And the protein is made of amino acids, and you can see here that these are all the amino acids that are in the protein. We'll get to how to use those in just a minute to put them into these circles. But the thing that you need to know how to do in order to do this is to decode the messenger RNA. So the gene has DNA in the chromosome, in the nucleus, but then a photocopy of the gene has to be made because DNA can't leave the nucleus, but the machinery that makes proteins is outside of the nucleus. And so what happens is, in the nucleus, a photocopy gets made called RNA, which is made with complementary bases to the DNA. So for every G there's a C, for every T there's an A, etc., except that RNA, as we have learned, instead of having a T, has a U. So if there's an A on the DNA, it matches a U on the RNA. Anyway, that molecule is made like a photocopy, and it leaves and it goes out into the ribosome to be translated into the language of proteins. And so that is where this chart comes in. The amino acid decoder table is really important because it tells us how to go from this, which is messenger RNA, to these, which are amino acids: phenylalanine, leucine, isoleucine, methionine, valine. They all have 3-letter abbreviations, and the way that you do it is it's read 3 letters at a time. You can see I've divided this chain up into alternating black and red so that it's easier to tell the 3-letter groups apart. The 3-letter groups are called codons. Anyway, let's look at this first one. The first one is UUU. And the way that you read this is over on the side that says first base, you find the first letter, which in this case is U. And here it is. So here's U. What that's telling us is that the amino acid that we're looking for, that it stands for, is somewhere in this row. That's when we go to the second base to narrow it down a little bit. The second base we look for up here. So I see my second base is also U, and so here is U. And so what that tells us is the first base narrows it down to this row. The second base narrows it down to just this column, and then if we look at the different amino acids, we can find the one that says UUU, and the amino acid that is coded for by UUU is PHE, phenylalanine. And so what does that mean? What do we do? Well, now that we figured out that number 1 is phenylalanine, PHE, you go to this sheet, slide 4, and you look for PHE. These are all in alphabetical order. And we find PHE. We highlight it. We drag it over to circle 1, and there we have PHE. Just to make sure that we've got this, let's do the second one, GUC. Okay, so again, we go over to first base, we find the letter G. That means that it's somewhere in this row. Now, if you want, you can just sort of find it and see that it's here. But the second letter, U, is our guide. You go to the top here and find the letter U, and what that tells you is where your first letter and your second letter intersect is where you're going to find your amino acid. Now, what we can also see here is that GUC stands for valine, VAL. In fact, any third letter would still end up with the amino acid VAL. But so, okay, we know it's VAL. So we go back here, we find VAL, and we drag it, and we drag it over to here, and you got your VAL. And you're going to do this, bop, 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 until you've completed the entire chain of amino acids. And remember that some of the amino acids stand for stop. When you reach that one, it's time to stop. And so if you do this right, notice how there are 50. And by the way, these numbers don't match up perfectly to the number of the amino acid there. This number 50, for example, is actually this one. And when you get to one that says stop, like UAG says here, stop, that's telling you that you're done. And with that, I will say good luck. I am Mr. Auerbach. Please be in touch and let me know what I can do to help you with this assignment. Thank you.